Right, so we're going to begin. It's our last community practice meeting, and Scott has graciously accepted the challenge, the enjoyable presentation of privilege, spending time with us talking about renewal. So thank you so much. We'll run till 3:15, and as ever, we hope that the conversations continue outside and continue. So thank you.
I think we'll start with just a moment, 1 minute of reflection. I just learned this, so. So welcome everyone. I'm not sure all of you would know this, but I had an opportunity from last March to last December to participate in the Shannon Leadership Institute, which required me to go to Minnesota for 4 weekends. And it was with 20 other people around the country who had been chosen, and it was very exciting professionally. And it ended up that most of it was about renewal. And so the entire time I was at this conference, I kept thinking about me personally, but I also thought a lot about Nerd Academy as an institution. And I always wanted to bring something back. So it felt perfectly appropriate that I had this opportunity, so thank you. I'm going to try and take a year or 9 months of what I learned and condense it. May I encourage you at any time to ask me to speak with me. I can give you more information. What I'd like you to think about is today, as we approach the end of the year, that this really, my thoughts and what we'll be talking about are for you. Ultimately, they will transfer perhaps to your kids, but ultimately, really, it's about you. And it's about renewal, and it's about really taking time for yourselves. The leader of this conference is a man named Paul Robinson, a minister at one time, and still practices, but is now full-time at the Shannon Institute. Very, very wise man. And we spent 4 weekends together. I didn't make the last one because of my injury. But each weekend was a different place in Minnesota, and we had both physical challenges as well as group work, some spiritual work and all that. It was really, really extraordinary work, and I'm still doing, still learning with it. I have a handout for you, so you don't really have to do anything now. I'm not going to do a PowerPoint. We're going to talk, and I'm going to just give you some thoughts that I have, and then hopefully I won't talk that much. And you'll be able to have a conversation with me and with one another. I am not an expert on this. It's just what I've learned and what I've experienced that I think is worth sharing with you. I'm going to go through a lot of things that may feel a little bit disjointed. I apologize. I'm just sort of throwing it out there. Sorry, I'm going to throw some things out that might feel a little disjointed. Sorry, Blackie. And if that's the case and you want further clarification at any time, I'd be glad to talk about them. I'm just throwing a lot of things at you just to see what sticks with you. So let's just talk about what renewal is. First of all, it really is it's a strategy, and it's based on self-knowledge. Who am I? Where do I come from? And a lot of our discussion was about core values. Core values being central, non-negotiable values. What is central to who I am? You must, in this plan, have clarity of purpose. You must have a strategy, which is a plan of action. So for these 4 weekends, we had assignments. And by the 4th weekend in December, every one of the 20 people had to spend 30 minutes in front of the group and present their personal plan for renewal. It takes courage, it takes discipline, it takes commitment. You have to be willing to change, and once you are successful, you have to be willing to celebrate that success. So as I was going through my notes, one of the things I saw that was very interesting, so I'm presenting to you personally and from an institution. I'd like it, if you can, to think from both ways. One of the things they said to us was, that saying yes to everyone and everything pushes you further into the corner. Life constricts. So they drew a big picture and they said, think of what your strengths are. So think of yourselves as people and as employees at the school. You have strengths. And you are really good at you can identify what you're really good at. And the school acknowledges that. And they start giving you more and more because of your strengths. And what it does is it sort of shoves you into a corner because they see what you're good at and they start to push you in that area and restrict you a little bit. And all around you, the rest of it is stuff that you don't know if you're good at or you're not sure you're going to be given permission to discover. So it tends, by saying yes, you tend to restrict yourself. And one of the things they said was saying no sets boundaries. So all these people that I was gathering with were professionals, big time people from nonprofits, and they were all talking about their stresses at their job. And they were talking about the fact that they just didn't know how to say no. And in order to set boundaries for people that you work for or work with, you have to learn to be able to say no. Saying yes to everything ultimately actually sort of constricts your life, which I thought was interesting. They also made a quote that said, organizations are like babies. They're selfish. They want what they know. I thought that was interesting. They want what they know. They want you, Mike, there because of what they know about you. I know you want to experiment. We want you because we know you can do that. You can do it well. Don't worry about this other stuff. We want that. I thought that was interesting. One of the things we had to do early on in March, we had to write a personal ad. And this is something you might want to think about trying on your own. A personal ad for how you want to see yourself in X number of months. So in March, we had to write, what would we like to see ourselves as in December at the end of the program? So it's now May. So if you gave yourself a time frame and said, over the summer, at the end of the summer, this is what I want to look like. This is what I want to do with my life. And so I wrote the following. I'll just give my example. I wrote me, wanted, at peace, quieter, self-loving man, early 60s, having a great playful time, teaching young minds while keeping an active, planful eye on the future. Doubting is replaced with gratitude and excitement. New possibilities loom, yet there is much joy and love in the present. So that's my personal want ad. So it's a really fun exercise at some point to sit down and say, okay, this is who Rob Rezvani is now. Where do I want to be a year from now, 8 months from now? What do I see my life? What would I like to do with that? It's pretty interesting. Some other things about renewal. Incorporate changes immediately. Don't wait. Your changes are longest lasting if they're incorporated right away. I wanted to show you something that taught us. I thought this was pretty interesting. So, a couple of really high-powered presentations here. We have a staircase and a layer cake. So somebody was saying, in 5 years when my kids are this age, I'm going to start doing this. And in 10 years when they're this age, I'm going to start doing this. And then in 15 years, I'm going to get my master's. In 20 years, my wife and I are going to travel, et cetera, et cetera. Sort of a staircase. Here's where I am. In 5 years, I can go up to here. And in 5 more years, I can go up to here. In 5 more years, et cetera. So just the image of a staircase. Fair enough? And then he said, let's look at, let's just try something real quickly. So, Julius, I'll put you on the spot for half a second. What would you like to do that you can't do right now, maybe in 5 years? What would you like to do?
Probably play a little more saxophone.
Okay, personally.
Yeah.
You'd like to do that, have more time in 5 years to do it.
Yeah.
And then in 10 years, what might you want to do? What can't you do now that you might want to do in 10 years when your kids are older? And maybe go back on the road. Okay. So then they said, take a look at this layer cake, which I thought was really interesting. And they said, this is you're doing, in here you're really doing one thing at a time. This is what I can do now. I have a family, I can do this. That's what I can do. But soon enough I can get there. And then in a little bit I'll get there. And by the time I'm 60 or 65, I'll get up to here. I'll get there. And he said, let's look at a layer cake. Now here are all the things you want to do. all of these layers throughout your whole life, this is what you'd like to do. I want to travel, I want to play more on the road, I want to read more, I want to take a second language, I want to spend time with whatever. And now he said, take the knife and cut it straight down to serve yourself a piece. And turn it on its side, and all of the layers are there right away. Meaning you can have everything you want now, you just won't, it'll be in smaller portions perhaps. But you don't have to wait to accomplish everything, which I thought was really interesting. He said that time is hardly ever the reason that we don't do what we want to do. Hardly ever is it a matter of time. He goes, usually it's a matter of priorities and commitment. So maybe you can't go on the road now, but maybe you could go 2 days a year, 2 weeks a year, a weekend a year, something like that. So the point was not to wait until, because who knows when the staircase ends, right? I thought that was a really cool image. It may not, and if everything doesn't make sense now, that's okay. Just let it sit a little bit. I think this is not new, but you've all done this, just this idea of core values. You know, what do I really, really care about? What are my non-negotiables? What do I have to have? So Paul told this thing about the fact that as a minister, he was completely clear about his core values. They were family, faith, and community. He had it, he knew it. He did counseling with people and kids fabulously, right? He did community in his church perfectly. And he got home and he was so exhausted, he had nothing left for his family. And he went, something's out of line. And so he went back and retweaked his life and figured it out and went, I can't do that. I'm not living to my core values, which I thought was really interesting. So I'd throw some thoughts to you. What changes do you need to make to have your life better reflect your values? What changes do you need to make to have your life better reflect your values? There's no answer right now, but what would that look like? From where do you draw your strengths? What's required for you to lead a more meaningful and purposeful life? What practices nurture our spirit? When do we feel most alive? And then they talked about this thing called nutritious people, which I thought was a good image to keep in mind. So for yourselves to think about, who are the nutritious people in my life? Who are they? And likewise, who are the people that perhaps are not so nutritious in my life? But it's really good to try and surround yourself with nutritious people. They'll tend to really support what you're doing, and they feed into what you believe. There's an interesting in the packet, an exercise in the packet that I'm going to give you that was really interesting. They did it by age, fascinating, 5 to 10, 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, all the way to your current age. And they asked us to reflect on times in those age ranges that we felt the most alive, that we forgot time completely. It was really an interesting exercise. So for example, when I did Tevye 3 years ago, that was such an important, it brought so many things together. But when I was doing that show, time didn't even exist for me. So if you go back and start thinking of memories when you were 8 years old, what might it have been? Where you never thought about time. You just never thought about time. And if we can find some way, in some form, to reclaim some of those moments, to when we were really truthfully so alive and so happy, we lost track of time. We've all experienced that in the classroom, on a trip, whatever it might be, where you go, oh my gosh, yeah. You can do something for 5 hours and go, I had no idea I've been doing that for 5 hours. What do you want your life to stand for? Aligning your actions with your values. This was really interesting. I'm talking more than I thought. We did some African drumming around this lake that had a very interesting historical perspective too, because there were massive killings of Indians, Native American Indians in this place in Minnesota. And this person did this drumming, and one of the things they said was that if you take care of relationships, which are human connections, that whatever project you're working on, that will take care of itself. So if you take care of the relationships, the project will take care of itself. That you must serve the relationship. So if we think about our lives as we are, whatever context, we tend to, I know I do this too, we tend to focus on, whereas I'm not necessarily paying attention to the people. If you take care of the people, the work will take care of itself. Outcomes are better when relationships are served. Talked about the amount of tension, balance, to keep tension in your life. What's the appropriate amount of tension to maintain? What balance do we have to meet? And then this was an important one. When we spend the best of our time, talent, and treasure on minor things, we are primed for burnout. It's not central to our core. We have to align our time, our talent, and our treasures. When we spend the best of our time, talent, and treasure on minor things, we are primed for burnout. One woman said, you must self-care, you must receive graciously the care offered from others. This one guy said to her, he said, Valora, it's irresponsible of you not to take care of yourself. I thought that was pretty interesting. So, that's some of what I wanted to share with you. I'm open to any questions. The packet also, I got a little creative, but Julie and I have some pretty cool recipes that we like to make that are particularly healthful. So in the packet, I think there are 4 different recipes for no-bake, vegan, peanut butter chocolate chip protein bars, a fabulous paleo banana bread with almond flour, 1 bowl apple carrot muffins, and some great cranberry almond loaf. So they're all dailies.
Every day.
Say what?
Did you bring those here?
Well, it's very funny. I baked the paleo banana bread, and it came out beautifully, and Julie said, you can't take that, it's not big enough for the whole week.
What about a layer cake?
Share, you can bring it up to share with everyone.
That's right.